Hello, my name is Jason Miller, founder of ServiceNow's Solutions, and we're about to unlock the power of ServiceNow. Want to thank all the subscribers whom I've met at Knowledge 18. The conference was wonderful, and what we're going to do today is a director's cut of the presentation that I gave at Knowledge, and hopefully provide you with some wonderful information. Also, if you can hit subscribe, should be a red subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner if you are a newbie and you want to learn about ServiceNow. And also, there will be other cloud technology coming to the channel later this year. So yeah, if you can click subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. Also, I have some videos here from Knowledge, just wanted to mention. So I met some of the individuals whom I worked with and also connected with on LinkedIn and got to meet them in person. And also, I'd like to point out this one here, the Best Practice Engine application by Bravium. I saw a demo of it, and also I've worked with some of their staff in the past, and it looked pretty sweet. So definitely check that out if you're looking for a best practice app out there. Okay, wonderful. So now let's get to the breakout session, which was automating and trusting ServiceNow's SLA engine. Of course, I started out with Unlock the Power of ServiceNow. And this will be the director's cut. So this is going to be a little bit different than the presentation which I delivered, mainly because now I'll be able to flip back and forth a lot easier to the SLA definitions that I've made and kind of talk about them. I felt like at Knowledge I could have sat there for several days straight talking about SLA definitions and all the different conditions that you could create in response to user requirements. And one thing about Aspen Now I wanted to say is that our mission basically is to become the new global standard for educating beginners regarding cloud technology. So that being said, here's our agenda. So we're going to talk about the different perspectives within the organization regarding SLAs, some of the problems and mistakes I've witnessed and also I've made, and also talk about some of the victories. What are the ways that we proceed with approaching SLA implementation, and then what are the bells and whistles in the platform, and then there'll be a little bit of demo and questions, but that's going to be kind of intermingled in here since I have a little bit more time. So I'm Jason Miller, founder of ServiceNow's Solutions, and let's see here. How did I get into this ServiceNow world? Well, I was hit by a car in 2013, believe it or not. And when I returned to the workforce in 2014 with a wonderful management consulting company that had placed me in the ServiceNow vertical, the first time I saw ServiceNow, I just said, man, this thing is awesome. And I really have developed a passion for it over the years. And then also I wanted to kind of give back and say, you know what, I think that there's a great way to communicate solutions to people, simple solutions that is. The more complex ones you'll probably have to pay for, meaning get an integrator to do it for you, but the simple ones I think should be free, but that's just my opinion. So moving on. Okay, so why did I want to do this session? Basically because I think that SLAs are misinterpreted. There's probably way more than $1 billion paid out in incentive fees tied to SLAs, but I was just using a ballpark and also based on my experience because I know a lot of organizations that pay in the several millions of dollars, and this is monthly, to vendors for or in the form of incentive fees. And then there's this kind of inherent mistrust amongst the naysayers that the SLA engine doesn't work, it doesn't calculate the SLAs incorrectly. Well, I found it to be the opposite, that generally it's the humans that are incorrect. So we'll walk through this. And so let's talk about our concepts here. And this one slide I think is kind of the key to understanding the different types of organizations that we have out there. So first we have, we have three different types. We have our infant, our toddler, and mature. And the reason why I called it mature and not parent was basically because I'm sure you've heard the term parent a little bit too much. So I didn't want to use that term and get it confused with the other concepts that are within the tool. So let's talk in the four different verticals. Basically, I have it into reporting, then oversight, evaluation of performance, and then this is key right here. What is our senior leadership doing? So generally, your infant, they don't have any SLA set up in the system. They don't have any reports that are automated. Then we have no real auditing going on or manager sign off. Teams or individuals are evaluated just on whether they show up or not, and then senior leadership doesn't have a lot of anecdotal evidence or feedback from their customers in order to develop these contractual SLAs. Then we have our toddler, and our toddler is kind of like a sophomore in high school. All they know is that they're not going to make those stupid freshman mistakes, but that probably means they're going to make dumber mistakes. And one of those is they run the SLAs in the system, but they don't really rely on the reporting. They kind of take the data out, they export it on a periodic basis, and then they massage the data in spreadsheets. Then the managers do sign off on these things, but oftentimes there's no oversight there, and the managers will just kind of, just check the box that the report was submitted. And then teams and individuals are kind of just looked at on a workload basis. So like, how many tickets did you do? Well, great, but what's the difference between a password reset and a hardware replacement? Well, those are two vastly different things. So that question is often begged. And then senior leadership kind of understands the problems, but it doesn't want to get down and dirty and be tactical about things. They kind of want to stay up in the ivory tower and not have to deal with those things on a periodic basis. So then we have our mature organization. And then the SLA definitions and reporting, they're 100% automated. Audits are performed by non-interested personnel in addition to managers. And then the SLA performance and audit results, they map directly to performance evaluations. And I find this is key. So not only this, but also I find that in some organizations, and I've been part of one of them, where we would make firing decisions based on this. So, and it would just be one metric, but it was a big deal if you had other things that were basically in play, meaning that maybe there was user logging activity that was questionable, and then we looked at the SLAs also, but that tended to be a big deal. And lastly, and most importantly, senior leadership eats their own dog food. So I'm going to tell you a story right now about this guy who started selling books online back in the mid-90s. And his business grew, and he started selling other things, and he basically transformed the way consumers purchase various items out there, and so much so that brick and mortar retailers are now suffering. So I read online that this individual was in a meeting with about 30 of his lieutenants, and it was coming up on peak season, and he asked the person who runs the customer service desk, how long is the wait of the customer on the customer service line? The gentleman responded with, well, about 1 minute, without referencing any data point. So then this person decided to take out his phone, and he called the customer service line. So 1 minute went by, a couple more after that. And then this person was absolutely fuming and felt like probably that he was lied to. So at that point, and let me just tell you that this person is not only just the CEO of a major organization, but he's the richest man in the world. So at that point, all I have to say is that for every minute that goes by, that's $191,000. So we're talking about a phone call that costs nearly $2 million there. So I guess the point is this. Anytime that someone says, oh, I don't have time to get a little bit tactical and check on things like that, this is a good story to share with them. Of course, you want to do it in a nice way, but to have that understanding there that really what happens at the top of the organization is going to trickle on down, and customer service in a lot of ways is related to this topic of SLAs because it's all about performance. Are we performing against that target? So how do the different parts of the organization view the SLAs? Well, I boiled it down to two different perspectives. So we have our CIO perspective, and then we have our technical perspective. So there are two different things going on here. You could probably even put a third perspective in here for those of us who have to either oversee the process, meaning if you manage a service desk, and I've managed a bunch of service desks over my time, so I can tell you that there could definitely be a third vertical in the way you look at these things. But basically what it boils down to is we have a legal or contractual agreement on one side that has various different legal terms in there and maybe some technical terms too. But from a technical perspective, in the platform, what are we talking about here? We're talking about an automated task, has to be time boxed, meaning there has to be a duration there, and then we have to have concrete trigger conditions. So I felt like those three were the bare minimum for creating an SLA. So now if we look over here, I'm just going to talk a little bit about this SLA definition that I created that I'll be using in these segments. So I just called it K18 SLA4 Groovy, and basically what do we have here? We have condition type of default, our type is SLA, and this doesn't really mean anything here, by the way, this type SLA. This condition type does. This basically is the two that we have are default and simple. They're vastly different. So I go over those in another video, which is like troubleshooting simple versus default, because they're way different, the behavior of the two. The table we're running it against is incident, and then our workflow is default SLA workflow. Keep in mind, you don't have to have a workflow in here. If you take out the workflow, and like let's say you want to have SLAs without notifications, all you have to do is take this out. And then we have here duration type, which I put in none because we're not using a relative duration. 5 minutes here for our actual, and this right here is basically like our SLA target. So we're going to do 5 minutes. Schedule source, no schedule. And our time zone source here is based on the configuration item. So just make sure you have an understanding of these. There's another video on scheduling that you can go ahead and reference too. It doesn't get really in depth on a lot of the other videos, but I try to give you a basic understanding with examples also on how they function. So the more complex ones, I feel you're definitely going to want to get some expertise to help you out with that. So here's our start condition. We have here three different items, right? We have a configuration item, is this 3D groove back playback engine. Priority is low or 4, and our active is true. So then we have our retroactive start and retroactive pause, and I'll mention these later on. And then we're setting it to, on the retroactive start, whenever the ticket was created. And then when to cancel, the start conditions are not met. But I'm going to change this to cancel conditions are met, and it's going to fill in this caller.city. And I'm going to show you how you can prevent the triggering of an SLA by using the cancel condition also as part of the demo later. So that being said, that's our SLA definition right there. So then let's move on back here and let's see what else we have here. So then we got our chicken or the egg. And basically the question here is, SLAs on paper, do they really dictate what the automated SLA is going to do? I say sometimes yes, sometimes no. Later on in a related segment, so I'm going to do a couple of different segments. I'm going to chop this up into many pieces so that way you don't have to sit here and watch one, and then if you have to hop out, then try to figure out where you were. So we'll try to make this easy to digest, bite-sized chunks of information. So last year at Knowledge 17, Chuck Tomasi was building an application, kind of doing a demo, and he forgot to do one thing. So I'm going to get to that later on in another segment, but basically what I want you to take away from this is that whenever you're drafting SLAs on paper or maybe doing an RFP for an outside vendor, one thing you're really going to have to take into account is whether you're creating custom applications and then also which tables you're going to extend to those applications, because that's dramatically going to affect whether you can do an SLA in the tool or not. So this brings us up on our common SLAs or SLA problems and mistakes, and we're going to break right here and I'm going to pick up here in the next segment. And if you can, please subscribe. My name is Jason Miller, founder of ServiceNow's Solutions, and we've just unlocked the power of ServiceNow.